He ran past me, shoulders stiff, breath sharp and uneven. His uniform was soaked, his hands shook like he'd been standing in a freezer for hours. He wasn't even looking where he was going, just running. Like something was chasing him. I didn't say a word. Neither did Vince. The guy stopped just outside the door, bending over like he was about to throw up. His lips were moving, but I couldn't make out the words at first. Then, between gasps, I heard him. The whispers, the basement. I can't, and then he was gone. Vince didn't flinch. Didn't ask the guy to explain. He just took a long drag from his cigar and exhaled, watching the smoke curl toward the ceiling. Like this was normal. That should have been my first clue to turn around. But I didn't. 2 weeks before that night, I was staring at my bank statement, wondering how the hell I was going to make it through the month. I'd been scraping by doing warehouse jobs, barely covering rent, skipping meals when things got tight. The military gave me discipline, but it didn't give me a career. They don't tell you how fast life forgets you once you're out. So when I saw the ad, I didn't think twice. Eclipse Lounge seeking night security. $25 per hour. No experience needed. Serious inquiries only. Didn't care that it was a strip club. Didn't care that the hours were brutal. $25 an hour was too good to pass up. I showed up at the club that same night. The place wasn't what I expected. It wasn't some rundown dive with flickering neon signs and sticky floors. It was sleek. Rich red carpet, velvet ropes, a bar stocked with top-shelf liquor. The kind of place that had private booths for men who didn't like being seen. And in the middle of it all sat Vince Marino. Big guy. Built like a linebacker, but age was catching up to him. Slicked back gray hair, gold rings on every other finger. He had that presence, like he didn't need to raise his voice to be in charge. When I walked in, he didn't ask for a resume. Didn't even ask my name at first. He just looked me over, took another slow puff of his cigar, and said, "You ex-military?" I nodded. Good. Means you know how to follow orders. He reached into his desk, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and slid it across to me. Read these rules, follow them, and you'll be fine. Break them, and you won't make it past the first week. I almost laughed. I'd seen my share of tough guys. I figured he was just trying to scare me into taking the job seriously. I unfolded the paper. There were 5 rules. No touching the dancers. If the lights act up after midnight, stand still and don't move until it stops. If you hear whispering and can't find the source, ignore it. Never go into the basement. If a man in a dark suit speaks to you, don't respond. Walk away. I glanced back at Vince. You serious? He didn't smile. Didn't blink. You want the job or not? I thought about my rent. My empty fridge. The stack of bills sitting on my counter. I stuffed the paper in my pocket. Yeah. I want the job. Walking into Eclipse Lounge for my first shift felt like stepping into another world. Everything about the place was designed to pull you in: deep red carpets, dark leather booths, gold-trimmed railings. The walls were lined with black mirrors, stretching the room, making it feel bigger than it was. Music pulsed through the air, low and hypnotic, blending with the sound of clinking glasses and murmured conversations. The lighting was soft, except for the stage, where deep violet spotlights framed a woman dancing like she owned the place. This wasn't some sleazy hole-in-the-wall strip club. It was polished. Exclusive. And yet, something about it felt off. The first person I met was Riley Stone, the bartender. I barely made it past the entrance before she called me over. "You the new muscle?" she asked, shaking a martini into a glass. She didn't look up as she spoke. Sharp features, auburn hair pulled into a messy bun, the kind of presence that made it clear she had no patience for nonsense. I nodded. Eric. She slid the drink across the bar to a waiting customer. You look like you actually work out, she said, sizing me up. Last guy? Walked in looking like a bodybuilder, walked out looking like he'd seen God. Yeah, I saw him leave. She smirked. Didn't tell you why, did he? Nope. Figures. She finally looked at me. Welcome to Eclipse, Eric. Hope you like weird. I did a walkthrough of the place, getting familiar with my surroundings. That's when I saw Nova Rose. She wasn't on stage anymore, she was standing by the VIP section, arms crossed, watching me. You're the new guy. She didn't say it like a question. That obvious? She tilted her head, studying me. Silver eyes. They almost seemed to glow under the dim lighting. You have no idea what you just walked into. Before I could ask what she meant, Vince's voice cut through the air. Lawson. He waved me over. I glanced back at Nova, but she was already walking away. The first half of my shift was easy. I stood near the entrance, kept an eye on the crowd, and did my job. No trouble. No fights. Then, around 11:45, something changed. The music warped, like someone was dragging a hand across a vinyl record. The lights dimmed, just for a second, but long enough to make people glance around. Then the cold hit. I don't mean a draft. I mean the kind of cold that sinks into your bones, clamps around your ribs, makes your breath come out in white puffs even though there's no reason it should. I rubbed my arms, trying to shake it off. That's when I noticed Nova, standing near the stage, staring at something behind me. Her face was completely blank. I turned. Nothing. Nothing but the booths, the bar, the same people who had been there all night. But when I turned back, Nova was still staring. That's when I saw him. A man in a dark suit, sitting alone at the back of the club. I hadn't noticed him before. But now? It was like he'd been there the whole time. He wasn't drinking. He wasn't watching the stage. He was watching me. I don't know why, but something in my gut told me not to hold eye contact. So I didn't. I looked away. And when I looked back, he was gone. I spent the entire day before my next shift staring at that piece of paper. The rules were simple. Too simple. I kept thinking about what happened the night before, the cold, Nova's reaction, the man in the dark suit. I didn't believe in ghosts. Or curses. But something was wrong with Eclipse Lounge. I got to the club early. Riley was already behind the bar. She glanced up as I walked in. You make it through night one. That's a good sign. I sat down at the bar. You ever gonna tell me what's actually wrong with this place? She grabbed a bottle, poured a drink for a customer, wiped her hands on a towel. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Eric. I just stared at her. She sighed. Look. I've been here 3 years. The people who last? We follow the rules. The people who don't? She didn't finish that sentence. Instead, she slid a glass toward me. Water. Drink. I picked it up. I'm not on shift yet. She nodded toward the ice cubes floating inside. Check the reflection. I frowned, tilting the glass slightly. The club was behind me. I should have seen people moving. But the reflection wasn't right. It was empty. I set the glass down. What the hell was that? Riley gave me a small smile. Like I said. Follow the rules. The night started off normal. Then a drunk guy started getting aggressive with Nova. He wasn't just loud, he was grabbing her wrist, pulling her toward him. I was already moving before I could think. Let go. The guy turned, scowled, sized me up. And if I don't? Nova didn't look scared. If anything, she looked bored. I didn't give the guy a second warning. I grabbed him by the collar, hauled him off the chair, and shoved him toward the exit. He stumbled, tried to swing at me, but he was too slow. Out, I said. Now. He cursed, but he didn't fight it. But as he stumbled out the door, something caught my attention. The man in the dark suit was watching. And for the first time, he smiled. The whispers started an hour later. At first, I thought it was just the sound of the crowd, the usual mix of voices blending together. But then I heard my name. Eric. I turned. No one was there. I forced myself to keep my face neutral. Eric. Louder this time. I swallowed, staring straight ahead. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on me. And then, just as suddenly, it stopped. I let out a breath, forcing myself to relax. That's when Riley spoke. You heard them, didn't you? I nodded slowly. She leaned in. Next time, don't react. Ever. I didn't sleep much before my third night at Eclipse Lounge. I kept thinking about the rules. About the man in the dark suit. About the whispers that seemed to know my name. Something wasn't right about this place. And I was done pretending otherwise. So, that night, I started watching. Not just standing around, not just doing my job. I watched the club. The people. The mirrors. The shadows. I noticed the man in the dark suit right away. He was in his usual spot. Silent. Stiff. Watching. But something was different this time. He wasn't looking at me. He was waiting. For what, I didn't know. So I did something stupid. I walked over. Who are you? I asked. His lips curved into the slightest smile. You don't belong here yet. His voice was low, almost too soft to hear over the music. But you will. A chill spread down my spine. Before I could ask what the hell that meant, he was gone. I didn't see him leave. He was just gone. The whispers were stronger that night. Not a faint murmur anymore. They were clear. Distinct. Intentional. They called my name. Over and over. I didn't react. Didn't acknowledge them. But I felt them watching. Waiting. I found Nova standing near the dressing room hallway, staring into the mirror. She wasn't fixing her makeup. She wasn't checking her reflection. She was watching something. What do you see? I asked. She stiffened. Nothing. I stepped closer. Nova. She exhaled through her nose. Shadow figures, she admitted. They move when they think no one's looking. But they're always there. I looked into the mirror. I saw us. The hallway. The club behind us. And something else. A shape. Too tall. Too thin. Too still. Standing just behind me. I turned, nothing. Nova grabbed my wrist. Don't look for too long. I faced forward again. The shape was closer. Nova pulled me back. They like it when you notice them. I went straight to Vince. He was at his usual booth, counting money. I dropped the paper with the rules onto the table. What is this place? He barely looked up. A business. That's not what I mean. He leaned back, cigar rolling between his fingers. You either survive here or you don't. That was it. No explanations. No answers. Just that. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the whispers. Maybe it was the shadows in the mirrors. Maybe it was the feeling that I was being pulled toward something I couldn't stop. Whatever it was, I broke rule number 4. I went into the basement. The door was heavy. The kind that shouldn't open easily. But when I turned the knob, it swung inward without a sound. I stepped inside. The air was thick. Not with dust, not with humidity, thick in a way that felt wrong. Like something was pushing against me. The stairs creaked under my boots. I moved slow. Steady. Halfway down, the light from the club vanished. Only my flashlight remained. I aimed it at the walls. And that's when I saw the photographs. They lined the basement like wallpaper. Hundreds of them. Men. Women. Employees. Some I recognized, bartenders, security guards, dancers. Most, I didn't. But all of them had one thing in common. Somewhere in the photograph, there was a shadow. A dark figure. Standing just behind them. The whispers started again. But they weren't calling my name this time. They were humming. A tune I knew. Something from my childhood. Then, a voice. A voice I hadn't heard in years. A voice that shouldn't have been there. Eric. My father's voice. He had been dead for 5 years. I turned. The shadows on the walls moved. They peeled away from the photographs. Pulled themselves into the air. And then, something lunged at me. I barely made it up the stairs. Something grabbed my shoulder, fingers like ice. I tore away, slammed the door behind me. I was breathing too hard, too fast. I pressed my back against the wood, willing myself to move. Then I saw Riley. Standing behind the bar. Staring at me. At my shoulder. I followed her gaze. Pulled back my sleeve. 3 jagged marks. Dark. Deep. Burning. Riley swallowed hard. You broke the rules. I didn't wait. Didn't try to catch my breath. Didn't let the burning in my shoulder slow me down. I went straight to Vince's office, threw open the door without knocking. He didn't even flinch. Just sat there, rolling his cigar between his fingers, looking at me like he'd been expecting this moment. What did you do? I demanded. Vince exhaled slowly, watching the smoke curl in the air. You went down there, didn't you? I grabbed the nearest chair and slammed it against the desk. What the hell is this place? Vince didn't yell. Didn't react. He just set his cigar down, leaned back, and nodded toward my shoulder. Show me. My hands were shaking as I rolled up my sleeve. The 3 jagged marks on my skin looked worse under the office lights. They weren't just wounds. They were blackened. Twisting. Like they were alive. Vince sighed, rubbing his face. Damn it, kid. Tell me what's happening to me. He leaned forward, tapping a finger against the desk. You ever wonder why this place pays so well? I didn't answer. Because I already knew. Vince pulled out a drawer, tossed an old photograph onto the desk. I picked it up. It was Eclipse Lounge. But not how it looked now. The building was older. Different. The neon lights weren't there. The stage wasn't there. The walls were bare concrete. The photo was black and white, but I could still see the bloodstains. This wasn't always a club, Vince said. It used to be a facility. Off the books. No records, no oversight. They brought prisoners here, people no one would miss, and they experimented on them. I gripped the edge of the desk. What kind of experiments? Vince's eyes flickered to the basement door. Then back to me. The kind that never ended. I felt sick. And the shadows? Vince took his time answering. Finally, he gestured toward the floor beneath us. They're what's left of them. The whispers started again. Soft. Teasing. Closer than before. Vince kept talking, like he didn't hear them. You see, some things don't die just because you bury them. Some things stay. And when the place was turned into a club, those things didn't leave. He picked up the photo, tossed it back into the drawer like it meant nothing. They're territorial. They don't like strangers. And they definitely don't like the rules being broken. I gritted my teeth. So who the hell is the man in the dark suit? Vince's mouth tightened. He's the one who keeps them in check. Until you break the rules. The lights snapped off. The whispers turned into screams. I didn't move. Couldn't. The darkness wasn't empty anymore. I saw them. Not just shadows, figures. Crawling from the walls. From the ceiling. From the floor beneath me. They were thin, stretched, unnatural. Their faces were hollow. Sunken. Grinning. And they were hungry. I backed toward the door. Vince didn't move. Didn't even look afraid. He just shook his head. Told you, kid. You either survive here, or you don't. I had a choice. Stay and fight, or run and never look back. The shadows closed in. Faster now. A cold hand brushed my wrist. That was enough. I turned and ran. Didn't look back. Didn't stop. Didn't breathe until I was outside. As I reached the parking lot, a voice whispered in my ear. Not a scream. Not a whisper. Just a statement. You belong to us now. I turned, but there was no one there. Just the dark. Just the club. Just the feeling that something had followed me out. I didn't go home right away. I just drove. Didn't care where. Didn't care how far. I just needed to get away. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Because something was still with me. The marks on my shoulder burned. It wasn't like before. This wasn't just pain. This was a warning. Or maybe a promise. I pulled up to my apartment, killed the engine, sat in silence. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I reached up, rubbed my eyes, then glanced in the rearview mirror. And that's when I saw it. A figure. Sitting in the back seat. Not moving. Not breathing. Just watching. I couldn't scream. Couldn't move. Some places don't let you leave. Not really. You might walk out the door, drive home, turn off the lights, tell yourself it's over. But deep down, you know better. Because when the rules exist for a reason, and you break them, you don't get to just walk away. So tell me, if you found yourself in a place like Eclipse Lounge, where the walls remember, where the shadows watch, where the whispers know your name, would you stay and fight? Or would you run, knowing it might already be too late? Drop a comment below. Let me know. And if you ever see a man in a dark suit sitting alone, watching you, don't answer. Don't look back. Just walk away. Because some rules aren't meant to be broken.